Hey everybody, study. I'm sorry I played hooky last week. I wanted to watch a Seinfeld episode, so I just couldn't make it. Thank you for your prayers. I felt pretty bad last week, but doing much better. And we are continuing our study in the pre-tribulation theory. And remember, we started out studying the various millennial theories. And now we're studying the tribulational theories. And of course, the backdrop of each of these are the same, postmillennialism, premillennialism, amillennialism. So Lord, bless your word into our hearts. So God, we want to see what your word says. And Lord, challenge us towards the truth. Lord God, in every way, we bless you in Yeshua's name. Just want to say again, there are things that are doctrinal, and there are things that are semi-doctrinal, and there are things that are not doctrinal because there's widespread opinion. And most of these widespread opinions arrived as a reaction to an opinion. Okay, so just be aware of that. I think we've developed that a little bit. Hi, Sherry. We've developed that a little bit here. So we're dealing with pre-tribulationism, and we give everybody heart attacks. We
post-tribulation.
Yeah. We're getting into that, but we have to finish up pre-tribulation. You don't have a handout? It's in your email.
I know I printed it out, but it doesn't have the.
Okay.
What do you need? I can go make copies. Pre-tribulation.
Post? Oh no, this is just this is a general description. Tribulation theory.
Post-tribulation.
No, there is a specific. Yeah, because we're finishing this up.
Is it tribulationism? Is what part 2?
Okay, that is the outline that I sent today. It's just worded a little differently.
Okay.
I didn't print the one.
You know what? Next week I'm going to put them all together in a little booklet. Okay, I have them all. Huh?
You're recorded.
I deny it. Okay. All right. So one of the things that pre-tribulationism deals with is Paul's statements about the wrath to come, and that the believers would not undergo the wrath. And so if you believe that the wrath is the wrath of God upon the sinners, that's going to point you into one direction. If you believe that the wrath of God is the wrath of the dragon and the anti-Messiah and the forces of evil against the believers, then that's going to point you in a different direction. You understand what I'm saying? So it's very important to get a handle on what these terms mean. What does it mean? What is the wrath that they're speaking of? What does it mean to meet him in the air? Okay. What does it mean to restrain, and who is the restrainer? Right? Depending on that. And, I grew up pre-millennial dispensational. That was my backdrop. And over the years, I've retained many things from that are really good and solid. But I've incorporated other things that I like as well. And so there's kind of a synthesis that's going on in my own thinking about this. And I'll give you some of that, but not until the very, very end when we talk about what can we put together that is consistent throughout, and is that even possible, right? So let's talk about the wrath of God, or the wrath of the anti-Messiah, whatever the wrath is. Okay, so here's a key scripture: 1 Thessalonians 5:9. Yeah, 1 Thessalonians is going to be important as a pattern, right? 1 Thessalonians 5:9. For God has not destined us to wrath, but for obtaining salvation through our Lord Yeshua the Messiah. Okay, so somebody reads this and they're going to read it from the wrath of the tribulation period. We're destined to salvation, not the wrath of somebody else will say, well, gosh, in the context, it doesn't seem to make sense that way. God's wrath is not upon us, but salvation is upon us. Okay, so what does it mean? 1 Thessalonians chapter 1 and verse 9. Since
1:9 or 5:9?
1:9. I guess I should have done this before 5:9. All right. 1:9 and 10. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 9 and 10. Since they themselves keep telling us about the welcome we received from you and how you turned to God from idols to serve the true God, the one who is alive, and to wait for his son Yeshua, whom he has raised from the dead, to appear from heaven and rescue us from the impending fury of God's judgment. Okay? So God's judgment. Remember, the Messiah is...
Mine says who rescues us from the wrath to come.
Yeah, it's the same word.
Yeah.
Wrath. Okay? So here,
God of grace.
God has made us alive.
But he must
We
punish
wait for
sin.
Yeshua, who what?
In 5:9.
When he raised him from the dead to appear from heaven and rescue us from the impending fury of God's judgment. Luke chapter 21 and verse 36. Stay alert.
Luke 21, you said?
21:36. Stay alert, always praying that you will have strength to escape all the things that will happen and to stand in the presence of the Son of Man. That's a little curious, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That you will have strength, right? To stand in the presence, strength to escape all the things that will happen. If I read this as strength to be ready, right? Living a godly life, right? Then I'm going to escape the tribulation period. If I have strength to escape the things that will happen, to stand in the presence of the Son of Man at his second coming, then that means that I'm going through the tribulation period. Okay.
But it says escaping all these things that are about to take place, like that would be the tribulation. So escaping like from it, no?
Well, remember, the people of that century believed everything was going to happen really soon because they were being persecuted by Rome. They couldn't conceive of anything worse than that.
Yeah.
You know, the persecution under Nero in approximately 60 CE was devastating to believers. Just the most horrible thing you can imagine, right? That old story, by the way, of Nero burning the city and blaming it on the believers is not quite true. That fire was started by accident at a flax oil factory by mistake. Now, eventually they did blame it on the believers, but Nero didn't start it. All right. But it was a terrible, terrible time. So 1 Thessalonians is the pattern for pre-tribulation, post-tribulation. But pre-tribulation, see this as this. The lying dead will be resurrected, and the living will be raptured at the coming of the Lord, and it will come suddenly. And they look to 1 Thessalonians 4:15. When we say this, I'll give you a moment to take a look. Yeah, 1 Thessalonians 4:15. Okay. When we say this, we base it on the Lord's own word. We who remain alive when the Lord comes will certainly not take precedence over those who have died. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a rousing cry, and with a call from one of the ruling angels, and with God's shofar, those who died united with the Messiah will be the first to rise, and then we who are left still alive will be caught up with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we will always be with the Lord. Right? So if you take it like premillennials, that the dead in the Messiah will rise, we are, who are alive, who are ready, right, will be caught up with him in the rapture, and we will, in the second coming, we will come back, but we will forever be with the Lord. Right? If you take this as the second coming, right, like post-millennial or post-tribulational, then this is the second coming and the resurrection of the dead, right? The second resurrection. Remember in John chapter 5? The hour is coming, and now is when those that will hear that the voice of the Lord will do what? Will live. And then later on in chapter 5, the hour is coming, but it doesn't say it now is.
But I thought in this one it says that the ones that are asleep in Jesus, not everyone. You know what I mean, for this part of this.
Well, it's the dead in the Messiah and the living in the Messiah that are
Right,
there.
but not the unbelievers.
Not the unbelievers.
Whereas in John 5, he said all will come out of the tombs. Which,
Okay, so here's the question.
Yeah.
By omission, does that prove the case? Because the unbelievers are not. What was the point here in 1 Thessalonians 5? People said that
they thought
it had already passed.
Yeah.
So he says, no, the resurrection of the righteous, that hasn't passed, right?
Yeah.
So if it's again, it depends on. I'm a premillennialist right now, so I'm going to take it as the former. This is obviously the rapture, and as per your point, the unbelievers aren't mentioned, so it's only the believers that are taken up. All right. The other thing is that the coming of the Lord will be like a thief in the night, and this is 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 3. Give you a moment to turn to your computers.
1 Thessalonians what?
5,
3.
3. Right. So, when people are saying everything is so peaceful and secure, then destruction will suddenly come upon them, the way labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and there is no way they will escape. Okay? So many will be lulled into false security, according to premillennials. Believers are not to be sleepy. They're not to be drunken, spiritually speaking. They're supposed to be alert, and they're supposed to be sober, right? 1 Thessalonians 5:9, continuing. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober, putting on trust and love as a breastplate, and the hope of being delivered as a helmet, right? So if they are alert, the wrath will not come to them. Post-tribulation period, people maintain that the promise is for the protection from the wrath of God, not the removal, not being removed from the scene. The wrath on the unbeliever. That's the way the post-millennial will take it, right? Premillennial takes it as what? The tribulation period that comes upon the whole earth, right? Post-millennial, the judgment, the final judgment that comes upon the unbeliever, right? That we're preserved from that.
Well, isn't the tribulation more of like the Antichrist persecution, whereas God's wrath is poured out, I guess, at the time of Christ's return?
Yeah.
See, these are very important questions.
Yeah.
Are they the same thing or are they different things? We have to study it. Is the wrath different than the tribulation? Isn't that the issue?
It is
Or
not
the-
the same, or it isn't the same. I always thought it was the same.
Yeah, because
That's what a postmillennial will say. But a premillennial will say they're different.
Might say something different.
What's that?
Revelation 16:1, I think, says it's the 7 bowl judgments or vial judgments are the wrath of God. I thought.
Okay.
That's what I've always thought is the sealed and the trumpets were tribulation, but the actual bowls, the vials were. I don't know. I always thought that was.
So maybe
the
what
wrath.
we'll-
I thought that was the wrath of God.
Well, let's put it this way. we might find out that the 7 trumpets, the 7 seals, the 7 bowls, all those 7 sevens, there are 7 sevens. They're the same story from a different vantage point. Okay, which in apocalyptic literature makes a lot of sense.
And when Jesus says that woe to you if it's on the Sabbath, or mothers that are still nursing, he's not separating the good or the bad. He's just saying, hey, be ready, so.
And he's talking about a tribulation that will come upon the earth. So believers, heads up, pray that doesn't hit you on a, right? So let's say the Romans are coming for me on a Saturday. I'm not allowed to go, but so far I'm not prepared to go. But now I'm going to think I better be prepared to go, even on the Sabbath.
So wasn't he referring to a certain extent about the soon coming, the Romans coming on Jerusalem and destroying Jerusalem and
Yes.
the temple and all that?
Yes.
But it was also for this later time too.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. The specific issue there was the destruction of the temple and the destruction of Jerusalem. Pray that it not be on the Sabbath. Okay, you won't be prepared. But now be prepared.
Yeah.
Okay. And many of the believers were, right? They fled and were successful. And then many stayed and fought and they weren't so successful. All right. How about this? Revelation chapter 3. And the premillennial is going to see this. Because you did obey my message about persevering.
Revelation
3:10, did I say?
But didn't when Yeshua was talking about the destruction in 70 AD, but he was also, because the disciples want to know, when are you going to
Yes.
set up your kingdom? So it's
And when will the kingdom be restored? Yeah, all of that, So Yeshua is doing what? It's like Isaiah's children are the promise for the virgin having a child, right? The virgin is going to conceive and bear a child, right? Bear a son. And what is the proof of that pudding? The proof of the pudding is Isaiah's children and their names. What is the proof of the pudding that the judgment on the earth will come, the tribulation on the earth will come? The destruction of Jerusalem. Okay? It's the destruction of Jerusalem and the going into captivity that is the proof of the pudding that, one, you'll be restored, right? And second of all, that judgment will eventually come upon the earth. So if you see this happen, know the other will happen as well. Is it clear what I'm saying? We have a lot of that, right? If you note in Exodus, and Exodus has a lot of parallels with Revelation. In Exodus, God gives them sign after sign after sign after sign. And you figure, why wouldn't they believe? But God himself says, you will finally believe when you get to Sinai. In other words, all of these things should be the proof that tell you you're going to get to Sinai and then from there into the land.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They did not believe that. They did not believe. But that's what it was supposed to be, right? If I give you $1 today, tomorrow I will give you $10.
right. They weren't supposed to be in the wilderness 40 years.
No.
Because it was
It's an 11-day journey.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have gotten there a little more than a week. But this is blind. That's what blindness does. Isaiah talks about men groping, groping.
Mm-hmm.
They can't see. And so when you can't see spiritually as a people or as an individual, everything takes more time. And that's why spouses often will come to me and say, Rabbi, do something. My husband, my wife, they just don't get it. They're not with me in it. It's because they're blind and you can't give them eyes. God has to give them eyes. So you be patient. Oh, you didn't see what I saw, and I'm not going to tell you. All right. So Revelation 3:10, because you did obey my message about persevering, I will keep you from the time of trial coming upon the whole world to put the people living on the earth to the test. In other words, to find out what whether they what mettle they have, what do they really believe. We have one speaker, I love him, Dan Mohler, who says, "Your life lived is the testimony of what you believe." And that's so simple, right? And that's what it is here. So the premillennials will say, because we have persevered and we are ready, we will be taken up. Postmillennials are going to see this as a what? As a lack of judgment on the believers, but judgment on the earth, right? Romans 5:9. Therefore, since we have now come to be considered righteous by means of his bloody sacrificial death, how much more will we be delivered through him from the anger of God's judgment? Premillennials are going to see the judgment and the anger as what? The tribulation period, right? Postmillennial is going to see it as what? The second coming. That the anger and the judgment are the same thing. Right? 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 6. Now, again, at the very, very end, and I think next week, hopefully we could probably, well, next week I'm going to be out of town.
Right.
Well, you'll have some time to think about these scriptures. But once we get all this together, these are the scriptures we're going to have to banter about, right? So I'm giving you the things you need to be studying and in context, right? 2 Peter 2:6, 2 Peter 2:6 through 9. And he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, reducing them to ashes and ruin, as a warning to those in the future who would live ungodly lives. Here's that. If this happens, the other will happen. Yeah.
And that's considered which group? When one
No.
thinks that versus
No,
that.
all of the groups believe that.
Okay.
Okay, that this sign
Okay.
is the guarantor of the larger sign that is to come.
Could you?
Just want to confirm. Okay.
I know that you've said this probably a million times. Please forgive me. But so we're talking about the tribulation and wrath versus, or not, rapture versus wrath. I don't understand what we're
talking about. The wrath of God, the tribulation period,
mm-hmm.
and the judgment of God, the judgment of the righteous and the unrighteous.
Okay.
So we're talking about the rapture
Mm-hmm.
for premillennials,
Mm-hmm.
specifically dispensationals.
Mm-hmm.
Wrath, we're saved from the wrath, rapture. We're saved from the judgment, second coming.
Okay.
Right?
Because the rapture and the second coming are not the same.
Correct.
Raptures before.
Yeah. Wrath, rapture. Judgment, the judgment of the righteous and the unrighteous. Postmillennial will say, listen, I can show you how these two things are exactly the same thing. Okay? And you'll say, well, I don't believe that. Then you'll
So the
argue.
premillennials believe that. Okay, this goes because the premillennials believe that the rapture is us in the sky.
Premillennial dispensational.
So
Are you referring to pre-trib?
We're not there yet.
no. I'm just talking like the premillennials believe that the second coming is the rapture is us going up to meet Yeshua in the sky.
Yes. Then we're coming
And then
back.
the second coming is us coming back with
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
him. Okay.
And then within 1,000 years.
Aren't you
Yes.
referring to
On
the
the earth with Christ.
pre-tribulation?
Well, we're gonna discuss the pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib
I thought
theories.
you were referring to pre-trib, that they believe the rapture, and the post.
Well, they do.
Believe
The pre-tribulation dispensationalists believe in the rapture. A pre-tribulation person does not necessarily believe in the rapture. They may or may not. But the dispensationals are a subgroup of premillennialism or pre-tribulationism.
Pre-tribs premillennials are always pre-trib, but pre-tribs are not always premillennials. Is that what you're saying?
No. Pre-millennial dispensationalists are not necessarily pure premillennialists,
Okay.
right?
So,
Premillennialists are not necessarily dispensationalists,
okay.
but all dispensationalists believe in the rapture. But a premillennialist who does not believe in the rapture,
Is not a dispensationalist.
correct.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
there is a rapture. I guess it's the timing, right?
No, premillennials, pure premillennial without the dispensational, believes that the reign of the Messiah has already ensued. That because the Messiah is reigning,
Mhm.
right, that we are reigning with him. And he rules in the hearts of every believer, right? And he's the judge as well.
That's post-millennial. That's post-millennial, right?
They believe the same thing,
Oh.
okay? Except they allegorize the tribulation period, right? Right? So-
we're just learning trigonometry and
Yeah.
but
Well-
eventually we'll get the light bulb.
The terminologies
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just going to the final
Well, because
lesson.
I thought
To the
trib,
final
pre,
class.
post, mid trib.
Welcome to the last one.
refers to the timing of the rapture.
That's correct. That's within the dispensational camp.
Okay.
Pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib is all within the pre-tribulation dispensational camp.
Well, I mean, Paul clearly says there's gonna a rapture, so it's just the timing of when it's gonna,
Okay.
when it would happen.
Okay.
Not everybody believes the same, I guess.
No.
Well, I mean, it's some
Maybe I agree
scripture,
with
right?
Yeah.
But the rapture is called just the catching away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's from, remember, the Latin word for to catch away. That's where we get the word rapture.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
But the catching away to some is a catching away before the tribulation period, pre-tribulational, right? Dispensational, or no rapture, but the believers are spared in the they're reigning with the Messiah, right?
But how can you say that when Paul says we're gonna be gathered in the air and meet him in the air? That, I mean,
Because I'm not saying that. I'm a pre-tribulationist today.
Yeah, but Jesus also says that things are gonna go quickly, especially for the ones that are saved,
Mhm.
right? So the believers are gonna go through something, but it's gonna go quickly for our favor.
So something will be cut short.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
So I know what, so
That's a
people
good
are
scripture.
they're gonna feel the heat at some point. It's not gonna just be gravy here on out, you know?
Yeah.
We may be tested and put to the fire at some point,
Well,
you know?
again, I just want to bring to your attention, we are here in this very comfortable, heated house.
Yes.
In the
other
United
people in
States
other
of
countries
America.
are going through tribulation.
They are going through tribulation. Like these Filipino missionaries, dozens of them beheaded in Arab countries, or people persecuted in China, or people persecuted, in Soviet Union. In other words, in other countries, Nigeria, it has civil war, religious civil war. The Christians are persecuted like you can believe, right? So in other parts of the world, people are saying, "Are you crazy? We're going through tribulation right now. We can't possibly believe what you're saying," And some of them are pre-tribulation people, but they managed to work it out, right? That the Lord is coming still.
So what is the what is the reason or explanation for why we are not seeing that level of persecution? Because I mean, it's not like
It is because of, well, first of all, we're seeing an increasing level of persecution for religious people generally. That's clear. But remember, we have a different constitution.
Mhm,
Like England has a different constitution.
mhm.
England, for example, within its own history, abolished slavery in 1803. So very progressive in terms of human rights. So countries that have
Mm.
an accent on human rights
Mhm.
and personal liberty,
Mhm.
have a safety net built in so that government's
Right.
job is the well-being of society, not the well-being of a state religion
Mhm.
or a state politic,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it's the nature and the uniqueness of our Constitution, which is not a religious document necessarily,
Mhm.
but based on Judeo-Christian ethics and logic. And so we're protected in this country and always have. However, when the Catholics started coming into this country, the persecution was terrible. Catholics were persecuted ruthlessly. Okay. So,
Here?
yeah.
I didn't
And-
know that.
Oh, yeah. They had a terrible time. But interestingly enough, if it wasn't for the Catholics, we would have no Christian holidays. Early on in the history of the United States, every holiday except Sunday was abolished. Christmas was abolished.
Mhm.
Easter was, Puritans, yeah.
Mhm.
And the Catholics brought them back, actually. Yeah.
Mm.
How
So-
about the Jewish holidays? Were they?
Jews were persecuted, but again, you have a safety net, and lobbies, and people fought far and hard to get civil rights. I mean, it's still going on, in the hearts of a lot of people. But the Constitution is a unique document in the earth. We take it for granted because we've had it all this time. But there is no document on the earth, not even the Israeli Constitution, comes near
Well, then
to
they
what.
say it's on life support now, our Constitution, because after 9/11, when they started the Patriot Act, as far as
Well, these are emergencies, and it could be that. And look, we interned all these Japanese people during World War II. Was that fair? It wasn't fair, but we weren't living back then either, in fear of our lives of being massacred by a fourth column, right? Japanese column. So I'm not saying it was just. I'm saying that they did what they thought they had to do, and the Constitution allowed for that in an emergency situation. So emergency situations are dangerous. They're dangerous to those civil liberties.
Yeah,
Right.
they've set up FEMA camps all over in military bases for emergencies.
Well, anything can happen. So, but it does what in the final analysis, and I want to really hit this. It doesn't matter about the level of persecution. We're worried because if we don't get hot water, we're like in a panic. What am I going to do? The water heater's gone. I got to call somebody. The water heater's gone. And I mean, in other countries, they got water and sewage in the same pond. They're not looking at hot and cold water. They're just looking at survival. So we're a bit sissified. We're when I went to, I've been to a lot of places, but what got me especially was South America. when I saw and the islands, these paradise islands, the Virgin Islands, you go to on the outside, it's like incredibly beautiful and elegant, and just a few miles inland is dirt poverty. These poor little kids. So
I guess,
we're
Rabbi,
privileged. Yeah.
I guess really the reason why I was asking about that was because I was thinking about, how we are kind of sort of like you were saying about the tribulation, like, are we in the tribulation time? We don't feel like we're in the tribulation time. It feels like something that should be coming, but other countries are feeling like it's a tribulation time.
Yes, exactly.
And so that's why I was wondering, like, well, if this is, not so horrible, if it's going to get worse, or,
Let me tell you, was it 72, the oil crisis? Was it 1972?
72-74 range, yeah.
So we're in relationship with a church, a big church,
Mhm.
and we're having good, I'm getting sidetracked here, but it is pertinent. It's pertinent.
Mhm.
And, gas is a big deal. Gas is cheap, and people going kids are driving their cars, and everybody's going everywhere that they want, and cross country, and it doesn't matter. We're just living it up, quarter
Mhm.
gas or whatever it was. and we had this wonderful relationship with I won't mention the name, with a church, and a lot of their kids came to our congregation because we were
Cincinnati?
active. Yeah.
Cincinnati.
When the oil crisis hit, we would go to that church for a special event and see dozens and dozens and dozens of signs on the bumpers of car. We need oil, not Jews.
Oh my
What?
Lanta.
I had a shock.
Oh,
You know, all of a sudden, all the paranoia that I grew up with welled up. You
Yeah.
know,
Wow.
and it was incredible. It was a
Is that because of an emergency time, people just get nasty? Is that-
they shot each other in line.
Oh my Lanta.
I mean, I'm not kidding. They murdered each other for gas. The lines were a mile, you know, just, and you couldn't get all the gas you wanted. It was all rationed, you know. It's a terrible time. So these kind of crisis times, you know, our World War II guys, they come home and they're heroes and they get, you know, standing ovations, and the store owners can't do enough. Vietnam, the baby killers, you know. So there's different seasons, and it can go like that. It can go nuts. Michael Brown, and I recommend this book, just wrote a book, The Seduction of the Church by Politics. I don't think that's the exact title, but it's quite a good book.
The
And
political seduction.
The political seduction of the church. And he traces it through, and you know, I mean, I love the United States, but it's not the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And we can't combine the kingdom of God with the flag. I love the flag. Every holiday, that flag is going to be out there, you know. And, you know, I think that people should vote and people should be active. But whatever tribulation comes, and for us in the States, let me tell you, when COVID hit and the truck stopped and you went into Harris Teeter and there were shelves with nothing on it, it was like, we're in it. It's here. I can't get an orange. You know?
Everybody's making their own bread.
It was astounding, and I felt it myself. With these little things, you know.
It just slaps you in your face, like saying
Wood, the price of wood. I couldn't. You couldn't do the projects you wanted. Wood was like impossible, you know. So I think that we're going to feel. What happens if we have a catastrophe? Right now, Maui has got a volcano. Okay, now we knew that every so often it erupts, but it may destroy the island. We don't know. Mount St. Helens. Who expected that? And the devastations, tsunamis, and so forth. So things can change, and that's why I think I would like the congregation prepared, and why we've done this over the past 3 or 4 years. Do not have your identity in your circumstances, because the circumstances of life can change just like that.
Yeah, that's
They just can change, topsy-turvy, upside down. But our identity in Him can remain steady. Right? And you know, I'm not saying that we're going to be thrown to the lions, but I'm saying that we could be very uncomfortable because we're used to our, you know, our iPhone 12 or 13 or 14, whatever it is. Today, Carol had YouTube go off. It's like, Joe, you got to fix this. My YouTube is coming off. And then all of a sudden she's on the internet, and it's happening to everybody. And she's fantasizing. What could you know, it's a panic. You can't watch YouTube. So the thing is, anyway, it was YouTube's problem. They fixed it. But you see how quickly, you know, all of a sudden your lights go out for 4 days, a week, and you didn't buy that generator that you could have bought, that backup generator.
Look at what Texas a couple years ago in winter.
Oh,
The
yeah.
devastating freeze they had.
So we have to be in season, you know, instant in season and out of season, because anything can happen.
And be
And that's
mindful.
why-
Be sober.
That's why
There's so much
it's
deception out there. It's
Yeah.
like
Stay healthy, because, you know, and stay off as much medicine as possible.
On the
because
internet.
It may not be there.
If you
YouTube,
can't get
right?
medicine.
Yeah.
Okay, we're coming back.
die.
Okay.
It's 7:40. We're back now. This is what happens. All right. All right.
You were reading 2:5-9.
Yes. 2:6-9.
Oh, sorry.
And he condemned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, reducing them to ashes and ruin, as a warning to those in the future who would live ungodly lives. But he rescued Lot, a righteous man, clearly Lot was a righteous man. But compared to Sodom and Gomorrah,
Yeah,
he's righteous. Okay.
right.
Righteous man who was distressed by the debauchery of those unprincipled people. For the wicked deeds which that righteous man saw and heard as he lived among them tormented his righteous heart day after day. So the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and how to hold the wicked until the day of judgment while continuing to punish them. So the premillennials will see, oh, they snatched Lot out before judgment fell. Noah got into the ark before judgment fell. Post-millennial, amillennial will see this as the final judgment. Okay? So you have to determine, go back into these scriptures, go back into the context, which one is it? Okay? Is it Lot being snatched away, not to suffer the earthly torment of judgment, the tribulation? Or is it Lot being snatched up in the resurrection to righteousness, and the world gets judged, and the righteous and the unrighteous having gone through the entire tribulation period together?
I think just like the Old Testament foreshadows, that is a foreshadowing of.
Right, but our challenge is to go back to 2 Peter, and I've got to now determine, is he speaking about a snatching away before the tribulation period or before the final judgment? Do you see how we're simplifying the question?
Mm-hmm.
Because of everything that we said before. Is wrath the same as judgment, or is wrath different than judgment? So now we're beginning to be able to see these terms and make very simple investigations. Which is it? And that's going to determine what you're going to believe.
What about when Yeshua said, like, one will be taken?
We're going to look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay.
Or he said that he told his disciples that he would come back for them, like in John 14. Like,
Sure.
I'll prepare a house.
In my house, there's many mansions. Does he have a house?
If
Are
it
there
were not
mansions?
so, I would have told you. And if I go away and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, so that where I am,
Whoa.
you may be also.
Okay, then quote 2 Corinthians 2:2.
Oh, God, give me hints.
That's all, Doc.
Not to be easily shaken in your thinking or anxious because of a spirit or a spoken message or a letter supposedly from us claiming that the day of the Lord has already come. He's trying to dispel that. The day of the Lord. Is the day of the Lord the rapture, or is the day of the Lord the final judgment? Is the day of the Lord the rapture, or the second coming, or the final judgment? You have to make a decision about that.
I mean, I've made
There's so many
decisions.
events going on. It's like, what to look at?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, this is going to be a lot simpler than you're thinking.
Is it really? This is what I need to know. I need the.
I'm gonna read the back of the book.
Well, this is kind of what I mean. It's like at the end of this, am I going to be able to really determine the difference between tribulation and wrath?
Yeah.
I am.
Mhm.
All right.
Real.
Then I'll hang
Yeah.
in there.
But you have to work.
I won't do it.
Okay. They're simple terms, but what's not simple is to fathom out in context, right? Are they the same? Are they different? Right? Are the 7 bowls, the 7 seals, all of these says, are they the same story,
No.
or are they chronologically different?
I've always taken it chronologically.
Sure.
I mean, that's just me.
No, I grew up that way too.
And that's why I was getting to where it actually literally says in verse 1 of 16, it says that these bowls are the wrath of God.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the bowls are from the view of the wrath of God. Okay. The seals are from the view of the judgments of God. Right. The trumpets are from a different view. Every 7 is from a different view. But if you take a look at the actual events, they overlap. The same events are in each bowl. If that's true, they can't be chronological. Okay, and that's it. That is the essence of apocalyptic literature, you see the whole thing at once. The Lord took me up. When was John taken up? On the Lord's day. He was in the Spirit on the Lord's day. So is that Sunday? Or is that the day of the Lord? If it's the day of the Lord, that's quite a different thing. Now he's there on the day of the Lord. And what's unfolding is all about the day of the Lord.
Wow.
The day of the
That's
Lord
a twist.
entails a lot of
That's
things.
a twist.
I've never heard that before.
Ding, ding, ding.
How about this? Peter speaks about Joel, and he says of Joel, look, these guys aren't crazy. They're not drunk. But Joel spoke about what? These last days. Well, wait a minute. I thought we are in the last days.
Right.
Well, we are. So is Peter. The last days are a long time.
Mhm.
Yeah, 'cause this is a day with the Lord
Huh?
for 1,000 years.
I'm just saying, apocalyptic literature
Yeah.
is event driven. We know things are going to happen, but the chronology, we're not so sure about. We know that the Lord is coming back, no question about it. And after he comes back for the final time, I'll say it that way, okay? However he said, the final coming back is what? The initiation of the judgment of God and the new heavens and the new earth. That we know, right? What we don't know is the coming back. Is that the coming back to initiate the 1,000 years? Or is that the coming back after the 1,000 years? And what are the 1,000 years? Are the 1,000 years literal, pre-millennial, pre-tribulational, dispensational? Say yes. We've got to have it. We've got to have it literal. Otherwise, how can you fathom this out? Well, if I have if I'm going to roast you next week, okay, can you make it for the roast? We're going to roast you. What would that mean to somebody 300 years ago?
Oh,
Yeah, you
God.
would literally.
We're
have
cannibals.
one mouth and turn it.
You're a bunch of cannibals.
I know.
But we know what that means because we've seen all these roasts.
Yeah.
We know what that word means,
Yeah.
and we know what you're in for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And we see it all at once, right? We see the toast. We see the meal. We see the jokes. We see the jokes against you. We see the jokes against one another. We see the whole thing at once because we are familiar with what it means to be roasted. So if you're going to describe that, you may not describe it chronologically. You may describe it as event. And then he spilt his drink on so-and-so, and he insulted so-and-so. It doesn't mean that he insulted him after he spilled the drink. It just means that I'm describing events. Okay? Remember, this is prophetic. This is partly epistle, but it is also very strongly apocalyptic. And we have to go by apocalyptic rules. In other words, the Bible is telling us what it means. As you know, I mean, it's nice to have a grid and it's nice to have a teacher that puts it all in a box. But then something comes along and we strain it and we say, ooh, I'm having trouble with that.
Yeah.
You know? All right.
When Yeshua said in Matthew 24, or when he was talking about like when the end would come, but he was saying that deception would grow so much that even if it was possible that the elect would be deceived. And I feel like with all of the internet and the YouTube, it's so much
So,
deception.
Here's a question.
Yeah, it is.
Does that text mean as if it were possible, meaning it's not possible? Or does that text mean if it were possible, meaning it is possible?
It is because he wouldn't bring that up.
Yeah.
Okay, but somebody else is going to look at that text. And I'm not saying you can't decipher it. You can.
Yeah.
If it were possible to deceive the very elect, it'll be so powerful. Does that mean then it's not possible? Or does that?
Whether you believe in eternal salvation or whether
Sure.
whether you believe you can
Okay.
that kind of works together the way you think.
Or if you believe in eternal security, you're going to interpret that verse a certain way.
Exactly.
But that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to see what the text says and then to believe in eternal security or not. And I'm not saying do or don't. I'm just saying it's the text that comes first. Like, for example, if I believe that the ministry to the Jewish people is the most important ministry of the last days, and I'm convincing churches to do it, and I'm piling up scriptures, what am I doing?
You're eliminating another group.
What I'm doing is I'm proving my case
Proving the
backwards.
point.
All right, the case has to be produced forwards. What did the prophets say? What does the text say? What does Paul say? What does Peter say? And then I formulate my opinion. Right?
You were taking what you believe and then using text to.
And preachers will do this from the pulpit all the time. I have a topic now. I have to find scriptures.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not the way to do it. That's not the way to teach or preach. You look at God inspires you. If He inspires you with a topic, then you have to find scriptures that actually say what your topic is about. You can't just find a couple of scriptures through the internet and put them together and see this proves my case. You're gonna.
I did a study on faith, and so I looked up every single scripture I could of faith in the Bible.
Yep.
And I came out with a different understanding.
But then here's a simple thing. Did you look up faith or faithfulness? Because it's the same word.
Just faith.
What about faithfulness?
I didn't look up that word.
See? Okay. If I want to know everything about faith, I've already limited my search. If I don't know what faithfulness means. All right. Anyhow, let's go back. Let's go back. How about Rabbi Saul is going to ease their minds? He's going to point that before the day of the Lord's vengeance comes, other things have to happen, right? And one of the things that has to happen is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7. Right? For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. So the restrainer is restraining, right? Once the restrainer is removed, the wicked one is going to be revealed, because in the next verse, verse 8, and then once the restrainer is removed, then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth and bring to an end by the appearing of his coming. Right? So for many, the departure in verse 3 and the removal of the restrainer in verse 7, did we go back to 3? Take a look at verse 3. Let's read that again.
You're saying 2 Thessalonians 2:3?
Yes.
Okay.
The departure from the faith.
He'll let no one deceive you in any way, for that day will not come unless the rebellion comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction.
Okay. So
Mine
Nope.
says apostasy.
the
comes first.
apostasy. Okay. The apostasy will not come. Right? Once the apostasy comes, then the man of sin comes. We've got an event. Supposedly, right? So the Greek noun aphostasia, and I have that on the previous outline. Aphostasia is apostate, the apostasy. It sounds very similar to the Greek. The apostasy, right? And if it's rendered apostasy, what does it mean? It means moral and spiritual or doctrinal abandonment of the faith, right? So you get an apostasy, a departure, and then the man of sin is revealed. All right. And so many will take this as the same event, right? The apostasy and the bringing on of the man of sin, same effect, right?
Wouldn't the apostasy lay the background for the maintenance position to do his thing?
If that is the way it goes, of course, it makes perfectly good
I
sense.
think that's just a way. one way.
Yeah. Okay, but there's secondary connotations of that word, so we have to look at that, right? It could mean disappearance or departure, right? So if you want a meaning of a word, then what is the customary usage in the New Covenant, right? So there's only one instance, verse 21 of Acts 21, which allude to rebellion against God, where that word apostasy means rebellion against God. Acts 21:21. And they have been told about you that you are teaching all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to apostatize, to leave, to forsake Moses, telling them to not circumcise their children, nor to walk according to the customs. Now, this word apostasy occurs 6 times in the Greek in the Septuagint, right? And it always connects a departure from God, right? This particular verb is derived, this noun is derived, the verb is derived from the noun. And the verb is used a lot more than the noun. To apostatize. Okay? So to apostatize, let's take an example. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. Now the Spirit speaks expressly that in the latter times some shall depart, apostatize from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Let's take a look at
What was that reference again?
1 Timothy 4:1.
4:1.
What did I say?
So fast.
I couldn't. It was too fast.
So you have to slow down the freight train.
And what's the next one?
Okay.
After 1 Timothy 4?
Oh, now you want me to get along with it, huh?
No, I just wanted because it.
Luke 8:13. Now, this is the parable of the sower, right? So he sows seed, and some fall upon rocks, some fall upon thorns, some fall upon good ground. Okay. They on the rock are they which, when they hear, receive the word with joy, and these have no root, which for a while believe, and in a time of temptation fall away. They apostatize. Let's just read a couple more of these. Acts chapter 12, verse 10. Acts 12:10. And when they had passed the first and second guard, they came to an iron gate that leads to the Acts 12:10, which opened for them by itself. This is Paul and Silas, right, in jail.
That was my favorite Bible story as a kid.
I can see why. And they went out and they went along one street, and immediately the angel departed from them. The angel didn't apostatize, he just simply departed. Okay. 2 Timothy 2:19.
Wait, that's the same word? Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Same word.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
Well, why did they use it in the English? Why did they not use the same word?
I guess maybe some English translations have an agenda.
Oh.
Oh. Nevertheless, 2 Timothy 2:19. Nevertheless, the firm foundation of God stands, having this seal, the Lord knows who are his, and let anyone who names the name of the Lord apostatize from wickedness. Depart, in other words.
That was Timothy 2 what?
2 Timothy 2:19.
19.
And the last one is 2 Corinthians 12:8. This is Paul's thorn in the flesh, and he's praying to God I don't want this anymore.
What was the apostasy in Acts 12:10?
Acts 21:21.
Was it 12:10?
12:10?
No, 12:10.
That was the angel that departed.
Oh.
That was the angel departed.
Okay.
When the angel departed.
So they all mean say depart.
But they're
but they
same
have
word.
Different meaning,
Same word.
the same word.
The word means to depart, generally speaking. Where are we? 2 Corinthians 12:8. Concerning this, I entreated the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. Okay. So departure is a legitimate translation for the Greek. Okay. So what does it mean? Well, if there's a departure way back in, what did I say, verse 3 of 2 Thessalonians? So if we've got a departure in 3, and in 7, we've got the man of sin is going to be revealed, the departure means the departure of the church to a premillennial.
Oh, to a premillennial.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
So they're seeing the departure, the apostasy, not apostasy from doctrine, but they're translating, and they have good support.
Mm-hmm.
They're translating that word not going to corrupted doctrine, immoral practices, but the apostasy is the departure. And the departure of the saints, therefore, it comes before the revelation of the wicked. Makes sense.
Yeah.
But as we get into the text, it might not. All right? Which, guess what I have to do?
Break it down.
Leave you.
Break it down.
All right?
Simplify.
They are legitimate. It is legitimate. But now you're going to have to go into the context at some juncture. I would start now. Okay? Again, now we have another issue. Is the word apostasy that we just read in 2 Thessalonians, is that apostasy, the apostasy of believers, meaning turning from God, or does it mean departure, as in the church departing this earth? So that the rapture. Okay? So if you believe it means the church departing from the earth, then you're going to be pre-tribulational, dispensational. If you believe it's apostasy, that means something else. That means the believers are going to maybe go through the tribulation period, and many will succumb, right? In apostasy.
But then it talks about in verse 8, this restrainer. Like, who's the restrainer?
Oh,
That's what I'm saying.
That's going to be our next little day, right? But go through this, take a look at this, and determine whether you are comfortable with the departure of the church, or you're comfortable with the apostasy, because the temptation is going to be so great during the tribulation period. Then we're going to go on from this. I'll give you a couple of more things to think about regarding that, and then we'll talk about the restrainer. Who or what is the restrainer? Is the restrainer God? Is the restrainer the Spirit? Is it something else? Is it the departure of the church, and therefore the Spirit departs? But if the Spirit departs, then who could be saved in the tribulation? There's all these questions. So you have to come to grips with that, right? And we'll get to it. And again, I'm trying to pare it down to 2 things. If these 2 things are the same, 2 words, 2 concepts, then it means one thing. If these 2 things are different, then it means another thing. And it will not be, in the end, that difficult for you to discern those kinds of various.
You keep telling us. It's getting more confusing.
No, you only have more pairs to consider. Okay? It's not, believe me, you only have more pairs to consider. Are they the same or are they different? But that's up to you to go into the context to take a look. Look, I made her tired already. Okay? And in the end, now look, we've got weeks to go on this. And in the end, you're going to come up with some very clear thinking. And you're going to say, Rabbi, this can't mean this. This has got to mean this. This has got to mean that. And all it will do is solidify your thinking about the last days.
Oh,
That's the only result.
I
You'll
should
have
have started taking this class when you started holding it 25 years ago or how
I
long
know.
ago.
Well, can I ask you a question since it seemed to be winding it down a little? That teaching that you gave years ago about the seals, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Do you still subscribe to that?
that they're all the same thing. The seven
No.
seals.
I remember that one.
The whole
Oh, the
thing about
ketubah.
yes.
Yeah. Now that's a little different. The seal, the seven-folded seal. That's what you're talking about. The folded seal. In the first century, and again, this is a different way to look at that particular seal. What is it? It's something very special. In the first century, it happened actually before the first century, but one of the greatest numbers of divorces were largely among the priests. They were hotheads. And in order to get them to kind of take a step back, anyone who wanted a divorce had to have a bill of divorcement. It was called a get, right? And the get had the get had to have the same names as the ketubah, the marriage document, right? So if I had two witnesses for the seals, I would have to have two witnesses for the get, and it would be folded over and rolled up and so forth. But the priests had 7 folds. So what that meant is for divorce proceedings to ensue for a priest, you had to get the 7 witnesses, and it took a much longer time. So it was kind of a cooling off.
Yeah.
Slow their divorce.
Yes. And in some
Yeah.
cases, stop them.
Yeah.
So what is God saying? He's saying, you guys, you believers, are being tempted to go to seek another husband. You're engaged to me, but so I'm going to unfold this get. I'm going to give you all these 7 things, 7 seals, 7 trumpets. All of these are the witnesses against unrighteousness.
Wow.
Don't fall into that. So I'm going to unfold each one of these seals. It's well documented.
Wow, that is
I wasn't the
awesome.
first to discover it. All right. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
So deep.
Yeah.
The Lord is so deep.
Well, but he uses the cultural understanding of the generation, and that's what we have to discover. Unfortunately,
That's not in
Right.
scripture,
So
though.
simple.
I know.
That's not in scripture about the.
no, but it was well known.
Wow.
Yeah, well known. It was a lot of things were well known, but when it's only relegated to a few scholars in the original languages, what do you do? But then all of a sudden, people begin to write in English, and it becomes available to people, and you look at this and say, "Oh, okay, that's what that is." Or the flying scroll becomes a very simple thing. All of these things become very simple if you know the backdrop of them, right? So Revelation is not that tough. It's only tough if we don't know the backdrop, if we don't know the terminology, right? Okay. All right, so I went over time.
That doesn't
I'm
happen.
sure everybody was happy about that. God, thank you for your word, the richness of it, Lord. And Lord, I don't want to have I don't want confusion to reign, but Lord, I know it's your heart to have every heart settled. And within everything, Lord, we need study, but we also need revelation of the Spirit. And so we ask for both, of God, to illuminate us like you illuminated the original writers of the Scripture. What they know, we can know, Lord, through scholarship, through inspiration of your Spirit. And I ask for both, of God, in these next weeks. We thank you in Yeshua's name. Amen. So we'll see you Saturday at 9:30 for our Torah study, 10:30 for our services, and all the festivities afterwards. Our mailing address is 131 Forsyth Street, right? Norfolk, Virginia, 23505. Okay? So if you want to write us, please do so. God bless you. Shalom. Oh, I can't get